again to the Mr. Irrelevant podcast. I'm Josh Lewin. I'm your host, and these are the stories of people who have done something somehow to get somewhere. And maybe it wasn't in the stars. Maybe it wasn't supposed to be. Maybe these people were told it would never happen, but it happened, and it's inspiring, and that's why we're covering it. Our guest today is a guy named Joe Davis, which doesn't probably sound like it's that interesting. It's just a guy named Joe with the last name Davis. If you're a baseball fan, though, you know this guy's work. He just happens to call the World Series, which is the biggest, best thing you can do. He does that for Fox Sports. Also is the voice of the LA Dodgers. That, too, is a very big deal. A fellow by the name of Vin Scully had that job until he was in his 90s. So basically did the job for 70 plus years. Was the best baseball broadcaster in the business for a very long time. How'd you like to be in your 20s and you're named the successor to that man? That happened to Joe Davis, and that was not a lucky break. That was out of pure merit, but there are still people that thought that was a silly hire. You know, how do you get a guy in his 20s to replace Vin Scully? That's just not a thing. How is a guy that was at Double-A baseball with the Montgomery Biscuits not too long ago calling a World Series, and not just any World Series. Most recently, at the time of this recording, a Dodgers-Blue Jays World Series that had epic twists and turns at every possible space that you can imagine. And he was responsible for juggling all kinds of balls and keeping things in the air. He does that with incredible aplomb. Also does NFL broadcasts. He's done some amazing work in college football. He's done college basketball. He can do it all. But he was told for a long time that there was a ceiling, that the best he could probably do was maybe some Division I basketball, which is very nice, and have a nice career at that point. No, he has sailed past that. If you think Joe Davis is just a random name, obviously that's wrong, because he is now literally one of the very best people in a very competitive business. If you're ready to meet him, we're ready to do that too. Let's bring on Joe Davis. So, Joe, I got to start back in a small town in Michigan because, and by the way, I love small towns in Michigan, but you're from a great one. Can you tell us about how you grew up and exactly where you grew up?
Yeah, Potterville, Michigan. I was born in Charlotte and then grew up mostly in Potterville, which is 2,000 or 3,000 people. I think if you look up the Wikipedia page, it's most known for a train derailment that happened when I was like an 8th grader. Train derailed in the middle of a trailer park in town. It had a gas tanker, so we had to evacuate the town, and whole big deal. But that was kind of our claim to fame, that and Joe's Gizzard City, which I have nothing to do with, but it's a restaurant where they're known for their fried gizzards, which is like chicken innards or something like that. And diners, drive-ins, and dives went there one time. So that's where I grew up, Josh.
And I love the pronunciation of Charlotte, by the way, instead of Charlotte. Typically Michigan, the kind of iconoclastic thing. So that's a beautiful identity there. You go to college you're a smart guy. You probably could have gone anywhere. How did you end up at Beloit College?
Yeah, it was the right combination of a chance to play right away as a quarterback, which might have been a little bit misguided to have as a priority. You know, if you get a chance to play right away, it probably means there's some problems, which turned out to be the case with my football career. But chance to play right away, and then it wasn't a broadcasting school, but that became an advantage because I didn't have any competition to get whatever reps there were to be had. And it was the kind of school, a small school, where if there was anything you wanted to do that they didn't have, you could find a professor that was willing to help you create that opportunity. So it became the perfect place for me to kind of guide my, when I knew exactly what I wanted, which I did going in, perfect place for me to create that.
And at 21 years old, you head off to Schaumburg, Illinois, and this is not even affiliated baseball, the Schaumburg Flyers, but it's a foot in the door, right? And tell us about that experience and where that led.
Yeah, that was the summer before my last semester. So I graduated in 3.5 years, knowing that I wanted to do baseball. And had I graduated in a normal timeline, I would have had to wait a whole nother year to take a full season job. So graduated in 3.5 years. And before that final semester, it was in Schaumburg, like you mentioned, an unpaid internship. We were doing all kinds of sales calls and everything like that too, but I didn't care one bit. I was getting to call games professionally for the first time, and I remember several times pulling up to the park, again, not getting paid a cent and working, I don't know, 15, 16-hour days and just having nothing but an amazing feeling of being there. So I think that was a pretty good sign that I was headed in the right direction.
So, I'm just, again, trying to figure out when you go from Potterville to Schaumburg, that's not a huge thing geographically anyway. And I would think in a mindset too, you're crossing a state line, but that's it. Your next opportunity to actually get more than 0 cents and put something in your pocket anyway is in a place that is nothing like where you're from. You go down to Montgomery, Alabama, and you're a biscuit for a little while. How did you get that job, and what was that experience like?
Yeah, so I was lined up coming out of the Schaumburg internship with a job for their new sister team. They were launching a new franchise, and I was lined up to take that job coming out of college, but decided, hey, AA, AAA jobs, might as well apply for it. And so in that last semester when I was at Beloit, that was one of the jobs I applied for. I think there were 140 people that applied for it. Whittled down to 15 or something like that got interviews. And I remember my wife saying, oh my God, at that point it was my girlfriend, but I remember her saying, oh my God, we're moving to Alabama. I'm like, no, I just got a phone interview. There's still 15 people that they're narrowing it down to here. But it turned out that I did get the job. It was just the right marriage of an organization wanting to and being willing to take a chance on a young guy and a guy like me that had gotten quite a bit of experience to that point at an early age. And I was in a college English class when the phone rang, and I had to step out to accept the call to take the call to accept the job. And again, Montgomery Biscuit sounds small time, but I was the youngest AA announcer in the country at that point, and it was kind of the springboard for everything that followed.
So, yeah, did that give you some cachet that you're able to kind of be established as the wunderkind now, and people will return that phone call, I suppose? So when you get a chance to do some Comcast Sports Southeast, which, again, compared to the World Series, that doesn't sound huge, but at 21, 22 years old, it is. You're on TV, and you're going to multiple states.
Yeah, I don't know if I had any cachet just from getting that job. I think it was more, Josh, I've always, while trying to be really present in whatever I'm doing and being great at whatever I'm doing, I was always thinking about what was next too. So as soon as I got down there to Montgomery, I was networking with the local TV stations, networking with the local colleges to see what work there was. And I think that just snowballed into more and more opportunities, and maybe eventually got some cachet for being the young guy that had done a lot. But I don't know that it was because of that I had any kind of reputation that led to anything in those early years.
Well, I'm glad you put it that way because, nothing ever gets handed to two people. I think some people see that you have accomplished so much, and maybe because they don't want to admit to themselves that it could be anything other than just dumb luck. This guy just fell out of the lucky tree and hit every branch on the way down, and the next thing you know, he's doing the World Series. It actually takes a little bit of guile, a little bit of networking, put your tentacles out there and probably get a bunch of no's before you get a yes, right?
For sure. I think that you have to operate with some intentionality. You got to know what you want. You got to then align your days to try and get what you want. I think once you're really clear about what you want, it becomes clear how to do that. It becomes clear how to spend your days. And then from there, right place, right time. But you set yourself up for that for sure.
Yeah, right. You prepare yourself for success, and you do that, I'm sure, by being the best version of you can be. What does that look like when you're preparing to do, because you're not even at ESPN or Fox yet at this point, but you are doing some work for a regional sports network? What kind of preparation goes into, I'll pull a random event out of my butt, but you get assigned a college basketball game with two teams you've never really seen before. What's that like? How do you go about making sure that you're going to nail that?
Well, at that stage, a lot different than it is right now, because at that stage, I was still learning how to do TV. I was still learning how to be a broadcaster. So I think that my prep has evolved through the years. It's still evolving. I'm still figuring out what are the highest leverage things that I do? What can I get rid of? And at that point, you don't know, right? It's like I think that freedom is on the far side of preparation. Like we talk about kind of just throwing our hands up and whatever. in order to know how to be efficient and be free, you got to work like crazy, and you got to do everything before you can know what pulling back and being free looks like. So in those early days, I was probably over prepping, had no idea how to prioritize. Not that there was a ton of information about Troy and Middle Tennessee State or whatever, but there was enough out there where I had to learn to prioritize, and that's an evolving process still.
So even in those days, were there mentors? Were there people that kind of took you by the hand, whether it was a broadcast partner, someone who had been in the space before? Who was able to kind of coach you along and say, here's how we do this?
There's so many, Josh, and I'm sure you've benefited from the same thing. It's one of the hidden beauties of our industry. And I say hidden because I think you just wouldn't know if you weren't in it. But there are so many, there's a tradition of passing things down. And I was the beneficiary of that as much as I would imagine anybody ever could be. Joe Block, who's with the Pittsburgh Pirates, I say Joe taught me how to critique. He gave me the first really detailed critiques of my work. Len Casper of the Cubs was the first big guy to tell me that I've got it and that he thought I could do it. And what a huge deal that was. When you go in wide-eyed to the industry, seeing that everybody wants to do this, who the hell am I? How am I going to do this? To have Len give me that vote of confidence was a huge deal. Pat Hughes, Cubs radio guy. And then, I grew up a Joe Buck guy. He was the one doing all the biggest games when I was a kid. And so I grew up wanting to be like Joe. And eventually getting to Fox, met Joe. And he's gone from being my hero pretty much to somebody that I approached and met, to a mentor, to I look at him as a friend now. And again, anytime you do this, you're going to leave people out. Mike Tirico's been amazing to me. Al Michaels has been amazing to me. But I'm the product of so many people that have gone out of their way to help me.
But you bring up a great point that I think is salient for really any industry. I mean, there are big guys, big girls. There are people who have absolutely put skins on the wall, have done everything in the industry. And I find them to be very approachable too. I'm always kind of surprised that more people don't simply approach. And maybe it's just having the gumption or not caring, or just diving in. But is there something to just having the courage to call a Joe Buck and say, hey, I want to be like you someday?
Yeah, I think it can go either way, because I think I probably leaned in the other direction too far. I was probably a pain in the butt. I was probably kind of a nuisance. Now, I don't know if I would change that, but now being kind of on the other side where I'm somebody that can help the younger generation of broadcasters, I have a different perspective of it, right? I think back like, gosh, I would have annoyed the heck out of me if I had approached networking with grown-up Joe the way that young Joe did. So I think you can go too far. But also, I've heard it put this way, where you can, if you're going to climb the mountain, you can go by yourself and make every mistake and step in every hole and trip on every rock along the way. Or you can hire a Sherpa that's mastered the mountain already and have a smooth climb. Why wouldn't you learn from somebody who's done it before? So I think it's negligence to not foster mentors and not learn from the people that have done it successfully before you.
And I agree with you that in this particular industry, it seems like it's kind of Sherpa central, that people do enjoy, because you, like you say, you're in this position now. When you give advice, when you dispense it, like the Joe Bucks and Mike Tiricos did to you, do you have a kind of a running A through Z of here's what I need to impart to you, or is it not one size fits all? Do you listen to their individual story and react, or you just say, here's a list, go learn it?
Yeah, I don't really have a list. I'm sure there's things that I repeat more than other things. A lot of it is, as you know, critiquing tapes and giving them individual feedback on their work. But I think probably if there's anything that is more big picture that goes to most people that I talk to, it's just the idea of being yourself. And it seems simple and easy, but it's not, right? We want to be like the people that came before us, and kind of ties back into what we said. Yeah, we're learning from the people that came before us. We want to be like them, but you can't lose yourself in doing that. So allowing yourself to come through, I still work on that all the time. And it's a paradox, because you can't try to be yourself, right? It's more allowing yourself to come through. And I think that only happens with time and with trying out different styles and seeing what that means for you, allowing yourself to come through.
So let's workshop this a little bit. If you were to say, here's the best version of Joe, what does that look like? I mean, when you think to yourself out loud, okay, if I'm truly myself, to thine own self be true, who is that?
I think it's the freest version of me. I think that for many reasons, it's how I'm very type A. It's how I'm wired, is to try and, be a perfectionist and make sure I nail everything. So I think that's a big part of why I have to fight for that freedom. I think the other thing is the positions I've been in. Maybe I made it up in my head, but I felt like I couldn't make a mistake. Taking over for Vin Scully, taking over, doing the stuff at a young age, taking over for Joe Buck. I think that probably amplifies the striver and the type A, the perfectionist in me. The best version of me is when I kind of let go and let all that stuff fall away and don't try to be perfect and don't think about, hey, man, what are people going to think about me? Do they think that I'm this lucky young kid that doesn't belong here? There's, I think, imposter syndrome in any front-facing job, and I'm as guilty of having it as anybody. So the best version of me is the one that does the work, and I'm never going to not do the work. It's the version that does the work really hard, gets lost in the prep, and then the game begins and it just flows out of me.
So just on your timeline, because we had a lot of baseball fans, I'm sure, that are listening to this knowing that, hey, Joe Davis is on this podcast. I'm going to listen to that. Your timeline, I think a lot of people kind of forget. They think you literally went from Montgomery to the World Series, like in a straight line, or from Montgomery to the Dodgers, like from A to B. Not quite. Can you tell us about when you got out of Montgomery? How did Fox Sports find you?
Yeah, pretty darn close to a straight line from there, relatively speaking, to the point where I pinch myself all the time. I did 2 years at ESPN, mostly ESPNU. I'd started to do some ESPN3 and some regional stuff when I was in Montgomery. But when that got to the point that was a full-time package, my girlfriend had become my fiance, and we moved back to Michigan. In the 2 years of that, I did one Major League Baseball game on ESPN radio. And then my contract was coming up. So we did what you do, and you talk to other networks. And Brad Zager at Fox Sports hired me to come in there. And it was a big step up for me at that point, because I was going from doing the small level college sports, a lot of HBCU stuff, small college stuff at ESPNU, that one Major League Baseball game. And I got to go to Fox in the early days of FS1, where they had growing inventory, and I was their number 2 college football guy. I got to do consistent Major League Baseball. And soon after that, I still don't totally know, and I don't know if I'll ever really know exactly how it all came to be, but the Dodgers found out about who I was, and over the next year or two, so it was actually Fox first and then the Dodgers after that, but over the next year or two, that's when I joined the Dodgers.
How overwhelming is that even now that the Dodgers, it doesn't get bigger than the Dodgers, are essentially scouting you, and you don't even know it, that they're looking at you and your work and thinking to themselves, Vin Scully was a first ballot Hall of Famer, has been our voice for 70 plus years, going back to Brooklyn. We think this guy should take over for him. How just monumental is that to put in your head?
Yeah, well, at the first it was like, how the hell do they even know who I am? Again, I had done a handful of Major League Baseball games at that point, so I remember my agent saying, hey, the Dodgers are starting to think about life after Vin, and your name came up. And right away it was like, my gosh, this is crazy, let alone wind up getting the job. So I threw together a tape, because I didn't really have a baseball tape at that point. I hadn't done enough. I had some college baseball stuff, but we took the few games I'd done at Fox and made a reel out of that. And there wasn't a formal, and rarely is there, as you know, Josh, in the higher level jobs, like a formal application and whittle down process. About a year went by where we didn't hear much before it went really fast, and they said, you're our guy. And I actually was pretty close to turning it down, because I was in such a good spot with Fox. The goal had always been to do the World Series. I felt like that, Joe was probably going to do it forever, but if he somehow decided he was done or left, that I would be in a decent position to be the guy to take over. I didn't want to give that up. And so right at the last moment, the Dodgers said, okay, let's figure it out. But I had said no. square peg, round hole until those last minutes there, where we were able to figure out a deal where I could continue to do both.
It's a much, I guess, minor league kind of version of this, but I'm just thinking back to, I had an opportunity myself replacing John Miller in Baltimore years and years and years ago. And it was too enormous for me. I didn't want that pressure. He's an icon, did Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN for forever. And who am I to step into those shoes? And I shied away from it. I took a different job, didn't want the enormity of that. So I guess curious from a personal standpoint too. I admire it so much. How did you reach down inside yourself and say, I know how big this is. I know that whoever's being groomed to take over for this incredible icon of the industry is going to be looked at in a certain way. And how did you say to yourself, you know what, I don't care. I think I can do this and I want to do this.
Maybe it was naive. Maybe it was ignorant on my part, but I think it was the only way to do it. And that's why I wanted the job. I wasn't looking to join a team. As I said, I was in a great position at Fox, but this was different. This was special. And then once you start to lay there in bed and think about it, of course, those thoughts come up like, oh boy, do we really want this? And I just kind of, like you mentioned, you didn't take the job in Baltimore out of fear of not wanting to be the guy to follow the guy. I thought about what that would feel like in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, to look back and say, man, I had a chance to be the voice of the Dodgers, but I didn't because I was scared that it wouldn't work. And I just thought, that's not how I want to do this. Maybe it doesn't work, but got to go find out.
Is your background as a quarterback helpful, that you can see the whole field, that you can, I guess, kind of swallow your pride sometimes and say, okay, this particular drive might not work out, but we still might win the game? I mean, are those lessons that you can apply when it comes to even something like the Dodgers?
Yeah, I think so. I think that any of us that played sports probably were not conscious of those lessons having come from our time in sports, but I think there's no better prep lab for life than team sports. And I would argue specifically football. Your job is, you doing your job affects 10 other people. And your ability to do your job is impacted by those 10 people's ability to do theirs. So I just think there's so many things you learn about life playing football that I probably apply every day without even realizing it.
One last micro one, because I love going macro with you and just doing life lessons. But with Vin, God rest his soul. I mean, for so many baseball broadcasters, and by the way, he was a hell of an NFL broadcaster too, but will always be remembered, for being a World Series voice and voice of the Dodgers, things you are now. What was it like getting to know him? What was your very first meeting with Vin Scully like?
First meeting was the night before they announced that I was the guy that they had hired. He called me, and I didn't have his number, of course, so I ignored the call, sent him the voicemail. So terrible that I sent Vin Scully to voicemail. Awesome that I sent Vin Scully to voicemail, because now I'll always have that message, which is a nice keepsake for me. We didn't have a ton of time together. We were both on the job together for just 1 year. And when I say together, that's misleading, because he was doing the home games, I was doing the road games. So we didn't spend any time together. I hadn't moved to LA yet.
But the lessons never the twain shall meet. You're filling in.
Exactly. Ships in the night sort of thing, But we talked several times, and the biggest thing that he passed on to me is what I told you I probably pass on more than anything, and that is to be myself. And when I give guys that advice, that is is that third-hand advice from Red Barber, because that's what Red Barber taught Vin Scully. Vin Scully taught me, and now I'm spreading that gospel to anybody that'll listen. Just be yourself. And the way Vin put it is, don't water your own wine.
I like that. I think about that for a second, but I like that a lot. Yeah. So when the job became yours, and there's this, whether it was confetti in the air, acceptance that you're the new guy, or just a begrudging, okay, I guess this is our guy, whatever the difference between those two happened to be. When did you first feel like, okay, like this is my booth, it's me and Oral Hershiser, like this is really happening? When did that seep in?
I think in the 2016 season, which was where I was just doing road games, and it was often me, Oral, and Nomar. And then several where it was just Oral and I. And I think that we started to know that was going to kind of be the setup moving forward. I think Oral and I realized that we had a special chemistry. And I say there are two reasons I think that I'm still here, that they haven't run me out of town. Number one, the team's been amazing. I've been delivering good news. And number two is my relationship with Oral and everything he's done to validate me, rubber stamp me, give me credibility. Here's a Dodger legend. And he right away made it his mission to basically tell people Joe's okay, without saying Joe's okay. He showed people that he trusted me and he liked me. And I think that was a huge deal. I don't know if I have a specific time when it started to feel like I was the guy or that I was accepted. I really did feel accepted right away. But again, I'm not joking when I say part of that is the team has been so good. And so the news that I've been delivering has been positive news. And when people hear good news from their people attach the emotions of their fandom to the announcers. And it's one of the beauties of the job. It's one of the great things about sports. And it's worked in my advantage in this share.
Last one for you, because and it's fun I know you don't mean to name drop, and neither do I, but for every John Miller I have, you have an Oral Hershiser, and we've both been blessed to meet a lot of great people in this industry. But the old line, the old cliche is don't meet your heroes. I don't know how you feel. Everybody you just talked about, and let's bring John Smoltz in the mix now too, your partner on the World Series on Fox. You've met so many of your heroes. Is it gratifying to know whether it's Vin Scully or Oral Hershiser or John Smoltz that actually a lot of these heroes are heroes for a reason?
Yeah, and I think not to take anything away from any of them, this is probably how they would want it said. I just think they're just like the rest of us when it comes down to it. Yeah, they had exceptional, unique skills, but they're just people like us. And I think that it's pretty remarkable when they allow that to still be the case with all the success that they've had and how unique their individual abilities are. They're still just wonderful people. And that's part of what makes this job so special, is getting to sit next to those people.
And just to wrap it up, in an alternate universe, if you had not left Montgomery, if all these wonderful things did not happen to you, let's say you had grown old with your beautiful children now, they'd be going to school in the Montgomery, Alabama school district. And, you had never been on TV in your life and just had a nice career doing stuff in Montgomery. Would you have been okay with that? Would your life still have worked out?
Oh, it's so hard to say. Had you asked me then, I would have said no, that I would only be okay if I became the top guy at a network. And I don't know that that's healthy, but I think that there's something to having that hard attitude and that narrow focus and kind of manifesting it. I think if you have a fallback plan, there's a decent chance you're going to fall back on it. I never really did. So it's hard for me to say if I would be the most wonderful thing about my life is my family. And I guess no matter where I was and no matter what my job was, that wouldn't be different. So yeah, I think I would still be happy. But it's definitely an interesting chicken or the egg conversation about that type of single-minded motivation and what would have been like had it not come through.
Yeah. Well, Captain Ahab ended up with a harpoon around his neck. It didn't work out in that single-minded pursuit. But you're kind of the opposite. You set your coordinates. You got your white whale. You have the happy ending. And really, we're all the better for it. I'm glad personally for you that your life is so beautiful, but you do such a great job and bring so much joy because of your preparation and passion. We're very thankful to you, Joe. And thank you for doing this podcast. Really, really appreciate you.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, man. Anything for you, Josh. Thanks, buddy.
That is the great Joe Davis, and I really appreciate him, of course. Appreciate you guys for listening. This is a Mr. Irrelevant podcast.